All right, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session 7B on planning and program delivery. So I'm Robinson Nickel. I work with Atlas, immediate past president for ITE, and welcome to the session. So our first presentation will be on the update for the Georgia statewide travel demand model. Our first presenter today will be Habte Kassa, and he serves as the assistant office head for planning in the Office of Planning at GDOT. Habte manages the development and maintenance of the Georgia statewide travel demand model and 14 regional models. He also manages the congestion mitigation and air quality program, oversees the transportation demand management program, branded as Georgia Commute Options with ARC. Habte also oversees the department's design traffic forecast and various discretionary grant programs. He also serves on multiple boards with AASHTO Census Transportation Solutions and also Transportation Research Board. So let's go ahead and give Habte a round of applause.
Thank you, Robinson. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. So when I first came to this summer seminar 2 years ago, there were just 10 people, and I was just, should I present or just, huddle in some room and tell them what I'm going to be talking about? Last year, it was about 15. Now it seems like pretty decent. So it looks increasing. So this is a way of how planners and engineers are coming together. And I appreciate the Georgia IT section to kind of, bringing planning into, merging them into the engineers. So I think engineers and planners work together for, the final product to deliver projects into the transportation network. So we're going to be covering, I'll be tag teaming with Jennifer Zhang from Mara Mobility Partners. They are the ones who are, managing and developing, updating our transportation demand model. So we're going to be covering what the Georgia statewide travel demand model is, past and present, the history behind it, the 2020-2050 major update and enhancement that we have, and then what is the application? So basically, what is the model application? The use case is what I'm talking about, and the current GSDM specifications and all that. By show of hand, how many of you are familiar with the Georgia statewide travel demand model? Okay, that's a decent amount. I've used it. Okay, that's a pretty decent amount. So it's kind of, you have a statewide model, which is statewide, as its name, and then you bring it down to regional level to kind of, and then you go to corridor level, micro simulation, all of that gets this data from our travel demand model. And so particularly, Jen is going to be covering all of that in the slide that she's going to be covering, because there will be a lot of application, a lot of use case for our Georgia statewide travel demand model. This slide, it looks like a loaded slide, but I'll go through it pretty quickly. This goes back to the history of how and when we started the Georgia statewide travel demand model. So in 2009, it was shortly after I joined GDOT, the planning office started contemplating to develop statewide model. And so I was part of that team, and forgive me for embarrassing, where is John? Okay, Jonathan and Zhang Wang were part of the Georgia statewide travel demand model development, and I have such a great pleasure working with them. So that was for the Georgia Freight and Logistics Plan. So it was quickly developed and it was implemented. It was the first use case was for the Georgia statewide logistics and freight plan. So after that, in the top row, you see the year 2009, 2020, all of that, and then the GSTDM versions. There are 4 different versions that happened during the life of the GSTDM. And then you see the timeline at the bottom row. And so we didn't only develop the model and call it, we're good, but we also applied for a program called TMIP, Travel Model Improvement Program. We got funding and we brought 3 statewide modelers from across the nation, from Arizona, from Michigan, from Florida. And so they came in and we embarked on her for 3 days at the boardroom at GDOT. And then they reviewed our model and they gave us a lot of recommendations, like short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendation. And all of those recommendations were incorporated. So that was a good kind of, gut check, what our model is, whether our model is the state of the art and the state of the practice. So that gave us a pretty good recommendation. And then 2010 came in, the model was updated to incorporate the 2010 census information. And then, subsequent update. Then once we had the 2010 update, we also had the second round of peer review. But that time, the peer review, the funding was not really available. So we, the Federal Highway and US DOT, they help us to conduct virtual peer review. Nowadays, it's not really, it has become like normal to have like, virtual. This time around, we started having like a new process. When the model was first developed and then the subsequent two updates, we, the consultants and GDOT, were together kind of working on the update of the socioeconomic data. The zonal socioeconomic data was what we are just working internally. But now we asked stakeholders from regional commissions, from Georgia Economic Development, from district engineers. We put together like a group of people to come and tell us what their growth assumption is. We got a lot of comments. We incorporated all of those into our 2050 forecast. That was the first time that we did that in the past almost a decade and a half. So that gave us pretty good forecast and growth assumption. Particularly, we're very happy the Georgia Economic Development team, they came in and they told us what they are assuming, because it has to have some kind of land use or future growth, future. All of these Fortune 500 companies coming in has meant something to the model. So we incorporated all of that. And then now we have the final 2020-2050 statewide model, which incorporates a lot of cool stuff. Jen is going to go to a little bit detail, but this is pretty much the major updates and enhancement. I'm sorry I did not mention in the past, but the model is a four-step model, traditional four-step model consisting of trip generation, trip distribution, mode split, and traffic assignment. And by the way, the model has also the freight module. So the freight and the passenger module coming together. That was designed when the first model was developed, and that is basically the architecture of the model. And so now it incorporates the 2020 census data. All of the census 2020 census boundaries are incorporated and integrated fully. We also purchased for the freight module. We also purchased the 2019 Transearch data, and you know why 2019? Because 2020 is kind of because of COVID, it was out of the row. And so there are additional network years or model years. It's not just 2020 and 2050. There are in-between models as well. There is a linkage to a big data, which Jennifer is going to be covering some. And then we have significantly increased the network coverage and a lot of detail. So I'll hand it over to Jennifer to continue. But if you want to introduce Jennifer, that would be great.
Thanks, Habte. Jennifer Zahn is a co-founder of Modern Mobility Partners, a DBE firm founded in 2018. With 23 years of experience in performance-based transportation planning, travel demand modeling, and engineering, Jennifer has led many transportation projects in over 10 states for a variety of clients, WA, DOTs, tolling agencies, MPOs, and counties. She currently serves as the principal in charge for GDOT Technical Planning Service on-call contract, and brings a unique ability to translate technical information into ways people can understand that lead to a data-driven decision policies. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. So this is actually my first time coming to the ITE summer seminar. I always saying that I'm plant engineer, but then for my last 20 years of experience, most of the times it's focused on transportation planning. So it's great to be here and meeting a lot of traffic engineers. So I have been working very closely with Habte at GDOT Office Planning on the GSTDM update. Jing was supposed to actually making the presentation, but unfortunately she was not able to make it due to a virus infection. So I'm just presenting on her behalf, and if there are very specific technical questions, I'll try my best to answer those. So I'm going to get a little bit more details on the major updates and enhancement on this model. So Habte already mentioned that we have used actually 2019 trend search data as a base data for the validation of the 2020 base year model. Due to the COVID impacts, we want to making sure we avoid that scaled impacts. The other thing we have purchased, GDOT has purchased, is the 2050 trend search forecast. And then we actually have two sets of data, which one is the 2050 base year, and then the other one actually is a 2050 aggressive forecast. So these major enhancements really improved the accuracy of the freight data and the forecast, predicting that the freight are growing a much faster rate than passenger cars. And this is very crucial for supporting the planning analysis in alignment with federal emphasis on the freight travel. Habte mentioned the model years. We have updated 2015 to 2020. So in addition to 2050 as kind of horizon years, we also added interim year of 2030. And then for 2050, we have actually multiple scenarios reflecting different network assumptions. And all of those is to really better support the GDOT planning for different programs, and then also for us to better track system performance, reflecting different investment strategies that also considering alternate future. So in addition to the basic model data, I know a lot of people have used it. So, number of lanes, facility types, daily capacities. What we're doing is also expanding and then connected to the big data. And then you can see a couple of the list here, and I'll get into a little bit more details in the later slide. One of the major enhancement is the roadway curvature representation. So in the past, the roadway network is coded and then displayed as a stick diagram. But now you actually will see that showing the true curvature representation. So this slide shows a little bit better comparison, and you will see three kind of unique examples of how it changed from the stick diagram network to the true shape network. So the first example is the one-way pair of the barrier separated facilities. The second one in the middle is the high capacity change with different ramps connecting different directions. And then the third one is the parallel CD facilities reflecting, the true corridor capacity. So as you see, all of those is really kind of enhancing, the network accuracy for transportation network analysis. Here is some kind of statistics that comparing the two model set. Habte mentioned the traffic analysis zones, so you can see that it actually increased to 3,000 to almost double to 6,000 traffic analysis zones. So that's kind of units for trip generation, trip distribution based on the socioeconomic data from population, employment, and household income. So again, this is really the refined TZ help increase the accuracy of the detail of the GSTDM. The model network mileage is also increased, reflecting the true shape network as well additional coverage. One of the things I want to mention here is the resilience planning. So as a new emphasis areas from the planning side, we are trying to also have a better connection of the GSTDM to some of the resiliency ongoing effort office planning is doing. So Georgia Tech has been working on this research program on the transportation resiliency. So we have been in close coordination with them, kind of two ways. So we have been providing them the GSTDM outputs of like projected volumes and then the function classification. So they are able to actually using that information, incorporate it into the resiliency index. And then we are also going to use some of the information they have developed using the shoulders data, looking at the criticality as well as the vulnerability, and then feed back into the GSTDM. So the big data. So we all know there are so much data out there, right? And then how to really kind of linking them and make the best use of planning initiative is always one of the focus to support the performance-based planning. So in addition to some standard information, as you see here, like urbanized area, MPO boundaries, county boundaries, freight network or strategic network, all of those is kind of already incorporated. So to provide a kind of travel demand summaries by different geographic areas. But in addition to those, we also have actually different elements to show evacuation routes. Because of the true shape, we're able to connect it to the NPMRDS data. So you can actually get a little bit more information on the reliability as well as the travel time side. Equity is one of the focus for a lot of different initiatives, including the grants application. So we'll also overlay that in the travel demand model so you can actually see what congested corridors are also located in social vulnerability index, high index areas, as well as the EJ screening index from the EPA. The other thing I would mention that is there has been also increasing coordination with GDOT districts. The Office of Planning has been basically sharing a lot of level of service information by districts, by county, and feed into the GDOT districts. So integrating the data analytics with the local knowledge is super useful. So that helps really us identify the hotspots, hot segments, and also facilitate the discussion for scoping studies and then transportation analysis. So this slide shows some of the application of the GSTDM. I'm not going to go through all of those elements. The top one is, because this is the statewide and the regional model, is often used for supporting the statewide transportation planning effort. So that including statewide transportation plan, statewide freight plan, statewide rail plan, and then transit plan. Because this is the ITE seminar, I'm just going to quickly mention two kind of applications. One is the corridor study and the traffic operational analysis. And then the other one is the input to the design traffic forecast. So we have talked a lot about the GSTDM. In addition to that, the GDOT is also maintaining and updating the MPO travel demand models for all MPOs with exception of Atlanta region, metro region. ARC is maintaining and updating those models. So those what we call is the macro travel demand model. So it really forecasted the statewide and the regional travel pattern and the demand for both passenger cars and the good movements. So all of those can actually really help support and provide inputs for a project-specific analysis. So getting to the sub-area or getting to the corridor level, providing a little bit more information in terms of what is the growth rate for external travels, for freight, for passenger cars, and really help to identify and then help with the project-specific analysis. The other one is the design traffic forecast. So we have been currently coordinating with the design traffic forecasting team. It's very helpful when Habte is actually leading both of the side on the technical service contract as well as the design traffic forecasting team. So we have been having the conversations about how this GSTDM can help with the design traffic. One of the things we are doing right now is going to actually drafting and adding an appendix to the design traffic forecast manual with the update on the GSTDM. We're also in the process of discussing, preparing a training session for traffic engineers on design traffic forecast. The timeline is expected to have this rolled out in fall of 2024. So on the application side, we will cover, how can you use the GSTDM to understand the traffic pattern changes, and then how to use that for the future growth rate. And then the project types were including interchange improvements, corridor widening, as well as new construction. You can use GSTDM outputs directly to inform some of the data, and then you can also, if you need it, you can also learn to how to code the projects in the GSDDM and running that to understand the and build and then no build analysis. So if you have any suggestions on the training or specific topics you want to learn from that, please send the information to us. We'll definitely consider that and making sure we have elements to that when we roll out the training. So the current GSDDM specification, we call it GSDDM 2020-2050 version 1.0. There's a version control is because we are constantly trying to figure out the way to enhance the model itself. And then the 2050 can show that that's the really the horizon year in the future. When you request the GSDDM, we actually have multiple different formats available for you. If you just need output file that we have GIS shapefile, cube, KMZ files, we can also provide all the input files if you need the model to run some specific information on the project. On the scenarios, I mentioned that we have a 2030 STIP as in interim year, but then on the 2050, we have 3 scenarios. We have do nothing, which is only including basically capacity projects that were completed or under construction during 2020 to 2023. We also have existing plus committed. So this including the capacity projects with construction phase included in the new STIP with fiscal year of 24 to 27. And then we have 2050 STIP with basically any phases included in the current STIP. So the contact information is showing in this slide where you need to request the GSDDM files side, and the Jing really the point of the contact from the consulting side, but you can, if you can please also CC GDOT, Habte, and Brandon when you request that would be great. We are also working on trying to get a GSDDM webpage set it up. So when that is set up, we are making sure that we share that information with the group here. That's it. I'm trying to get it into 20 minutes.
Thank you, Habte and Jennifer. Okay, our next presentation is our next presenter is Jonathan Wallace. And a little bit about Jonathan. He is program manager at Arcadis with 16 years of experience in transportation safety. He currently leads GDOT's Regional Safety Improvement Program for Districts 3 and 6, Bachelor of Science Civil Engineering from Southern Polytechnic State University. He's a registered PE in Georgia and Virginia. He resides in Peachtree Corners with his family and enjoys coaching T-ball, supporting his doctor's hockey team. And I hear he's a really big fan of singing Aladdin songs for karaoke. Just what I heard. So let's give Jonathan a round of applause.
Yeah, I don't know if singing's really in my future, but yeah, we do the best. Again, I'm Jonathan Wallace. I want to walk through GDOT Safety Equipment Purchase Program. The goal, hopefully, everyone gets out of this is just kind of understanding how the program works, what it takes to get things submitted, and just provide some transparency to the program as a whole. I guess one quick question, who has heard of their safety equipment purchase program here? Okay, so a little under half. What local agencies do we have here? I see a couple, 1, 2, 3, 4, DeKalb, Cobb. Okay, very Oswald. You know, so, this program really is geared towards not just, necessarily, GDOT improvements, but really local improvements as well. The goal is to be more proactive when it comes to roadway safety, not just waiting for crashes to happen. So this program really does a good job to, focus on that proactive approach, and really is just another tool in their GDOT safe system approach to roadway safety. So a quick overview. The goal of the program is to provide just a quick delivery mechanism for low-cost improvement implemented quickly. you know, the equipment gets ordered, gets delivered, picked up, and then just gets installed, you know, as fast as it can be installed. So it really is meant to be a quick process. The program uses GDOT's existing warehouse contracts. So, you know, items that are on their QPL can be purchased, items not on the QPL can be purchased. The program is available, like I said, to all GDOT districts, locals, cities, you know, counties, you know, and anyone that's looking for, you know, equipment to improve a safety need. And then the program is federally funded. It does use HSIP funds. GDOT was able to get a special FHWA waiver to purchase equipment using federal funds. I believe it's still the only DOT in the country that's currently doing this. I think that, yeah, I think that is still the case. And then there, you know, a few things, like I said, it's meant to purchase safety equipment to be used for is to inventory, you know, purchase equipment, you know, for additional inventory for maintenance purposes. So some of the progress to date, like I said, the program was started back in 2001. So it's got about 3 full years under its belt. So from 2001 to about the end of 2023, about $2 million have been spent. And you can see on this map here, all the counties that equipment's been purchased for since 2021. It does cover all 7 GDOT districts. And then the equipment that's been purchased, you can see it's, you know, over 150 RFBs, pedestrian hybrid beacons, and that's the full build out, not just pieces, but buying the equipment for the full PHB. LED edge-lit stop signs, FYA improvements. I'm sure everyone in here is, you know, familiar with those. Static signage, you know, pedestrian heads, warning beacons. One thing that's not included in here is a new signal, you know, an unsignalized intersection to a signalized intersection. That was purchased using this program as well. And then since about the end of 23 to early 24, you know, since that money was spent, there is a current backlog of requests that's sitting out there for almost 90 RFBs, 1 pedestrian PHB, a new signal again, and then some radar feedback signs. So FY25, you know, new funding is going to be available soon. So that'll be another $1 million. And the goal is to just kind of keep, you know, rolling that forward, you know, fill out the program, and then the next fiscal year authorize the next project, and then just kind of keep it rolling from there. So typical equipment, it really is everything. You know, it could be any sort of static signage, stop signs, warning signs, no left turn signs, school signage, pedestrian signage, chevrons for sharp curves, you know, any sort of static signage, under the guise of safety can be purchased. And then you've got your electronic signage. So you've got school flashers, warning flashers, radar feedback signs, you know, edge-lit stop signs are starting to get popular to really, you know, enhance the visibility. You know, that equipment can be purchased. Pedestrian equipment, like I said, RFBs, push button signs, you know, again, PHBs, you know, any sort of pedestrian equipment can be purchased. And then all the way to your standard traffic signal equipment. So traffic signal heads, back plates, cabinets, poles, you know, mast arms, you know, all of that can be procured as well. So it really does run the full list of what can be bought. The process, it's very linear. It's not complicated. There's no offshoots, if then type things. There's really 7 steps as part of getting from identifying a location to getting it installed. So once the location's identified, that request gets submitted, request gets reviewed, and then once it's approved, then that quote gets sent to the vendors, you know, for them to, you know, fill out their quotes and what it's going to take to purchase the equipment. And once that quote is received, it then goes to GDOT's procurement office. They issue the PO, goes to the vendor, equipment gets, you know, they send it to the manufacturer, equipment gets shipped, whoever's requesting it picks it up, installs it, and that pretty much, you know, covers the process. So it is linear. It's not overly complicated. But in the next coming slides, I'm going to kind of show you what's involved in each one of these different steps to kind of give you an idea of what's involved. And like I said, provide some transparency to this. So identifying locations. There's really 2 main ways that locations can be identified. Either a data-driven approach or just a simple observed safety approach. You know, the data-driven approach really is waiting for crashes to occur. You know you've got an issue, you can quantify the issue, but I think more importantly is to be able to fix some of the issues before they occur. So that kind of gets into more of that observed response. So some of those examples of observed conditions that you can request for, you know, near miss for pedestrians, you know, speeding concerns through local roads. You know, if you get a lot of citizen complaints, people complain about speeding, you know, that can be some of the justification to request for some equipment. Sight distance concerns. There may not have been any crashes, but everyone's overly cautious because it is hard to, you know, maneuver through an area. That can be one. And then access control. I'm sure everyone's, you know, 5-lane sections, driveways everywhere, you know, some additional signage would be beneficial. You know, that's some of the stuff that can be requested for this as well. And then, like I said, the data-driven, I think most people know about Numetric. Clear Guide is another tool that GDOT's implementing for, you know, probe speed data. So, you know, those are 2 data-driven options that can be submitted when asking for equipment. So the second step, submitting the request. So you can see the email up here. Typically requests have been submitted to GDOT. I'm sure, you know, a lot of people have said, you know, we're not sure where to submit the request. So this email address here, moving forward, will be used to process all safety equipment requests that are being made. So when these safety equipment requests are made, you know, there's 2 locations that either have an on-system or you have an off-system location. So once these requests are received, if it is an on-system location, that request will then be sent to whatever GDOT safety regional team is handling that area, and then also coordinate with the GDOT district for that area as well, to make sure there's no overlapping projects, make sure there's no, you know, initiatives going on, and just make sure that, you know, it doesn't catch anybody off guard and it doesn't conflict with anything that's going on. And then once, you know, the districts in that regional group, you know, confirm that there's no issue and they want to proceed forward, you know, they'll email that notification back, and then that paperwork will get started. Now, there's a few caveats. So if there's locations that need, or if there's equipment requests that need permits, so your warning flashers, your PHBs, your RRFBs on state routes, and then larger modifications to traffic signals, those will need permitting. And one of the stipulations is that permit process needs to get started before that request is officially made, and some documentation of that permit process is started. Off-system requests don't need permitting. You know, the locals are, you know, handling city, county roads, you know, that sort of stuff. You just, you know, you submit, the request gets reviewed, and the process goes ahead and gets started. So signal permits, I'm sure most people are familiar with signal permits. Like I said, documentation of the permit, going through the permit process is needed when you do submit the request. For new, you know, documentation that the permit is approved or will be approved and just going through the steps is needed. We don't necessarily want to wait until a permit is approved, you know, to prevent, you know, any lag, especially, you know, if we're talking safety improvements. So documentation that, you know, a permit is pending approval is sufficient. Then obviously, you know, on a state route, modification to existing control, existing signal heads, you know, RFBs, like I said, PHBs, you know, some more examples of some more of that modification type permits. So the first form that gets submitted, this is the general guideline form. This form does not need to be submitted every time you make a request, but the end user does need to have this signed so it's on file. And basically, this just kind of lays out the guidelines and expectations of whoever's going to request their equipment and install it, understand that they're, you know, agreeing to. You know, MUTCD guidelines need to be followed. One of the requests is when equipment is delivered and picked up, it's installed within 180 days of receipt to make sure that, you know, things aren't just being stored for additional supply purposes. And I know a lot of times some of the, you know, local agencies go to the districts and the districts submit that. And like I said, you know, we request that the local agency actually have this form filled out so they know what they're agreeing to. So this kind of gets in the meat of it. This is the request form that's being filled out. So you can see the top box there. That is the requester's information. Their information needs to be up to date with the email address, phone number, because this is what's going to be used for all communication moving forward. And then also you can kind of see about halfway down, there's another contact for equipment delivery. Some of the issues are the equipment gets delivered. You try to reach out to the requester. Requester is not necessarily the person that's picking it up. So then you kind of have to start going the rabbit hole to find somebody that's going to pick this stuff up. So the request is, you have a requester that's asking for it, but then you have a second contact information of the person that's going to be handling the pickup from the GDOT facility. And then location and justification. So obviously street names, coordinates are important to make sure, we know exactly where this information's going. And then some of that, safety justification, like I talked about for on system or off system permitting, all of that, needs to be included as well. Equipment quantities, need to know how much of, how many pieces of equipment we're looking for. So if we need, RFB, for example, but you need 2 RFB, installations, 1 on each side of the road. If we're talking a 2-lane road, we really need that level of detail. If you've got a bigger ask, PHBs, bigger signal modifications, plans, you've got to have the signal plan because those provide the quantities because that's what's going to the vendor and they need to know what they're quoting and what's being asked of them. Preferences can be accommodated. So color, manufacturer, product type, all of that can be accommodated as well. But that's some of that additional information. If you've got product cut sheets, those can be included. All of these sorts of things can be accommodated. That's what needs to be submitted when you're asking for this stuff. And I guess one thing to mention, if preferences aren't mentioned or asked for, the standard equipment will be ordered, based on the low bid GDOT warehouse contract. So once all that's received, all this information gets put into the database and an equipment order number is generated. That number is what's used to communicate with everyone moving forward because it gives a unique ID and it really does help track down with us, GDOT, the vendors, everyone included, where the equipment stands, where the request stands, and it really creates that, makes that communication go a lot faster. Vendor quotes, once everything's approved, like I said, it goes to the vendors. The vendors are chosen by the low bid contract. Within reason, sometimes some vendors can ship things faster than others. So depending on how fast it's needed, we can certainly go down the list to the next vendor that can supply it if they can provide it substantially faster. So we're not beholden to just a low bid contract if, because time is a factor. And I think everyone agrees, the quicker we can move this stuff and turn it around, the better off we are. Typically quotes are received within about a week. So they don't take too long. Obviously, there's extenuating circumstances sometimes, but about 5 business days is what it takes to get quotes back. New traffic signals, PHBs, bigger requests, those take about 2 weeks because those requests are broken up amongst multiple vendors to get GDOT the best possible price. So that can be from anywhere from 1 week to 2 weeks about to get that those quotes turned back around. And then once all the quotes are received, IPRs are generated. It's an internal purchase request, and this gives the GDOT procurement office all the information they need to put into their system to issue a purchase order. So that information includes where the equipment's going to get shipped to, which GDOT facility it's going to get shipped to, the vendor's name, the contract ID with that GDOT warehouse contract, and then also the project number that the invoice is going to get approved under. So all that information is put in here, and then it goes into GDOT's procurement system. And then once that PO is issued, the requester is notified, local contact is notified, as well as the GDOT warehouse staff is notified. So those are all the people that are included in this chain once the procurement request has been made. So equipment ordered, it's about 4 to 6 weeks once the PO is issued, and then everyone's copied on the email, including the vendor. So it's about 4 to 6 weeks for the equipment to be shipped for standard equipment. So your signs, your RFBs are still in that 4 to 6 weeks range. Signal heads, more of the standard type requests are only about 4 to 6 weeks is what we found. Much better than it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, getting pedestrian poles was taking, 8 months, 10 months. That seems to have taken care of itself. So that 4 to 6 week time frame is what we're seeing right now. One caveat to this is mast arms. While mast arms can be purchased, those do need the extra step. The PO is issued, manufacturer receives the purchase order, it goes to a fabricator. That fabricator then has to create shop drawings. Those shop drawings have to go to the GDOT bridge office to be approved. And then once those are approved, that approval is sent back to the fabricator, and then they start fabrication. So that timeline, it varies, but once it goes back to the fabricator, you're anywhere from 18 to 24 weeks is what it is right now, go from fabrication to delivery. So that's kind of the expectation there. And then when an order is ready to be shipped, we ask all the vendors to let us know if they have a shipping date when the equipment is ordered, or provide us a shipping date when it's ready to go out. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. So, you know, once that information is given, then that, again, that goes back to that communication and that equipment number that's assigned, that unique ID. Then it goes back out to everyone and all that line of communication to let everyone know, hey, the equipment's coming. You need to get ready to go pick it up. So, like I said, shipment, email sent to the requesters, the equipment contact person that's on the equipment form, and then, you know, everyone else is needed. So the end user, it is their responsibility to pick the equipment up quickly. GDOT facilities are not meant to be storage facilities. You know, once it's shipped, get somebody there, pick it up, and then everything's good. Warehousing things is definitely not what they're after. So that's kind of a quick and dirty rundown. Again, this is the same process. So, you know, once the location is identified, the request is submitted, then once the request is approved is kind of when we can start that timeline. So we're looking at about a week to get everything approved once the answers are, you know, questions are answered and everything's ironed out. Equipment quotes, 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how complicated they are. Requisition, once the requisition is generated, goes to procurement, the PO is issued. That's about a 2-week turnaround. And then, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks for standard equipment to get shipped. So from the time everything is ironed out and there's no issues to the time the equipment shows up for standard, you know, nothing special, you're looking at about 3.5 months. Obviously, if there's preferences like color, product type, things like that, it can delay it a little bit, but 3.5, maybe 4 months for standard items is about where things are. So that pretty much covers it. If there's any further questions, you can either email Kelly Roberts at GDOT, or you can email myself. But thank you.
Jonathan, we will have some time for questions at the end. I meant to mention that as well. So our last presenter is Dan Dobry, and Dan has been a member of ITE since embarking on his career 45 years ago after getting his bachelor's degree from Maryland and his master's from Purdue. He has a PE in 5 states and also an AICP. So he's a great blend of ITE planner and engineer. In ITE, he's been very involved with the technical committee for this conference, as well as legislative liaison. He's represented our section with the Georgia Engineering Magazine and has participated in the mentorship program in the past with Olivia Cook. He has worked at Croy Engineering for the past 16 years, now heading up their planning division. And prior to that, spent a lot of time at Cobb DOT and progressed all the way to the DOT agency head. In his spare time, he has a wonderful wife named Pam, and they just celebrated their 40th anniversary. And yeah, there you go. Happy grandparents as well to their kids' collection of cats, dogs, and a gecko. So let's give Dan a round of applause.
I will expedite the presentation. No, Robinson, thank you very much. I'm in some real good company with Jennifer. I'm actually pinch hitting as well. Amy Turner, our traffic engineering department manager, actually, this is her presentation, but she's in Philadelphia with the International ITE Conference, graduating from their Young Leaders program. So you get the B team. So I'm talking about a particular project that we were involved in with Fayette County. So with improving traffic operations. Show of hands, and I'm sorry, a lot of exercise today. Who knows where the town of Woolsey is in Fayette County? One. That's one more than I expected. Okay. So I'll get into the project in a moment. But first, for the 2 or 3 people who aren't familiar with Croy, we're located in 3 states, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. A little over 100 employees and have been in business for 19 years. I've been with them for 16. We're a full service consulting firm. We offer 14 services. We've been recognized as best firms to work for, and we're tremendously committed to our communities. We're involved in over 40 organizations, in some way or another, charitable. With our capabilities, with us, you can go from an idea on the back of a napkin to actually construction inspection and everything in between with the 14 different services that we offer. A couple of our notable projects: when Tyler Perry bought Fort McPherson, we did the design for the guide signs on 166 so that you can get there. We did the feasibility study for Kennesaw State University that launched their transit system, the Bob. And we were the lead firm for the skip span connector, which won a national award. The company is very interested in our employees and the community. Lunch and learns not only on a technical aspect, but professional growth. Our involvement in the Chamber of Commerce. Our CEO just rolled off as the Chamber President. And we sponsor different events like the Kennesaw 5K race. So we have a group that runs a couple times a year. That is us. So Woolsey is located in the southern part of Fayette County. Fayetteville to the north, Hampton to the east, and Peachtree City to the west. Very typical with this part of the metropolitan region or lower metropolitan region. Not real good east-west connectivity, and sometimes north-south connectivity is challenged well. So between Hampton and Peachtree City, you have to go through the town of Woolsey. And to give you some idea, we have more folks are registered with Georgia ITE than actually live in the city. So in order to go east-west, Hampton Road, the east leg, is south of the west leg, and you have to turn right and turn left if you're headed towards Peachtree City. And in reverse, if you're headed to Hampton, you come off the west leg, turn right, and then turn left. As you can imagine, and with State Route 92 just being one lane in each direction, the backups, the rear end accidents, et cetera, that occur because of the configuration of the roadway and the path that has to be followed. So there was some of the constraints, and the topic of I'll reiterate a couple times of the presentation, is constraints, context-sensitive design, and consensus. So everything will go back to those 3 topics. So in the bad old days, we would have taken the east leg, realigned it through the property that's the historic home, and created a 4-leg intersection, so to take the multiple turns out. But the constraint was A, the historic home that was on that property, B, the cost of the right-of-way to do that realignment, and the impact to their downtown area, which is where Town Hall and the small commercial area in the northwest corner. There's our offset. How we got assigned the project was we were the on-call firm for Fayette County's SPLOST-funded projects. So as I mentioned, the left turn volumes, queued, creating backups on 92 with the congestion and a significant number of rear-end crashes. As you can imagine, during the peak hours, it's very slow. Off-peak, 92 experiences higher speed limits than the posted speed limit. So a lot of challenges and constraints that we had to deal with. So we wanted to come up with a design, keeping the east and west legs of Hampton Road where they were, to go through several iterations to see what would be beneficial from a traffic operations and safety, a benefit, an enhancement to the city. The last thing we wanted to do was have folks that are just driving through have a negative impact on the charm, and the specialness, the uniqueness that Woolsey is. So our first attempt was let's widen and do left turn lanes. As you can imagine, because of the through maneuvers on 92, that did not have the operational improvement. We still had, when we did the simulation analysis, still had traffic backing up into the through lane. So instead of just stop control, we looked at signalizing the intersection with the west leg of Hampton Road, right there in the downtown area. And that created some issues with backups as well, as in addition to impacts to the access to the development, the buildings that were close to the intersection. You always have to look at roundabouts, so we tried the roundabout perspective as well. Things were okay, fine with the east leg, given that convenience store with the underground storage tanks, not too much problem there. But what happens with the western leg is that access to the antique shop in the northwest corner and to Hill Street in that southwest corner couldn't be maintained. So for the residents on Hill Street, we looked at, am I pointing to the? That one? All right, never mind. In the center of the two roundabouts, we did right in, right out, but the constraint there, the challenge was the grade difference. It was could not really make the grades work. So essentially, we're cutting off the residential development to Hill Street with the roundabouts. So going through the iterations, we looked at an R cut for the western leg, primarily because the eastbound left turns were pretty low. People weren't coming along Hampton Road to head north towards Fayetteville. They were getting their other routes before they got to 92. So the rerouting, if you did want to go north, I think it was 7 cars in the PM peak. The extra travel that you had to go south through the roundabout and come back north is under a quarter of a mile. A minimal rerouting with significant benefits to be gained with the R cut at the western leg. So everything you know these days revolves around the ICE analysis. In fact, I got a boss tattoo that says ICE. So from the looked at and had to balance the existing conditions, environmental impacts, operations, costs, and safety improvements to come up with what would be the preferred alternative, which in fact was, and this is what the construction documents are being produced for, is a signalized R cut at the east leg. The west leg, roundabout at the east leg with a bypass lane for traffic to continue south on 92. And So here's the 2042 no-build simulation. And you can see the, without getting those left turns out of the through lanes, how things back up, not only on 92, but that east leg of Hampton Road. The technical term we use for this type of operation is yikes. And here's the 2042 build with the roundabout and the signalized R-cut. As you can imagine, we have the overlap phase with the northbound left turns from 92 to continue to the west to get that right turn for Hampton Road to head south. And in off-peak hours, the signal would be on flashing yellow arrow to minimize the delay, especially when the opposing traffic is not as significant. So you can see the operational improvement we achieve, keeping the east and west legs where they are, and with the R-cut and the roundabout. So again, we wanted to be very, very respectful of the town of Woolsey. Folks are very proud to live there. So we wanted to enhance the character of the area, ensure that people had as an option to walk, not still have to drive everywhere, and instill that sense of place while adding lighting, drainage improvements, and minimizing the right-of-way impact. So it was a real balancing act to come up with the final recommendation. So the coordination, as you can imagine, State Route 92, we work very, very closely with the district office. The town of Woolsey was very involved again. People are proud to live there, and they wanted the roadway improvements not to be a detriment. And Fayette County, as the steward of the SPLOST money, with making sure that their goals and objectives were met as well. So with this coordination, we headed towards consensus. So one of the interesting things we did was for the project website, we did a voiceover and video, which was pretty cool. I would recommend that engineers not do that. Let the professionals do that. It was a good attempt, but we weren't just quite there. So what can I share with you with the lessons learned when you have a project that has significant challenges and constraints and wanting to build the, enhance the community, engaging the stakeholders, identifying who the main players were, getting them involved early, and keeping them in the loop as things progressed. Everybody's perspective is worthy. So acknowledging and addressing all perspectives was important for us. And we, again, balancing act, 10 or 12 things were happening at the same time where we wanted to try to maximize the benefit to be achieved through the project. Managing expectations. We tend to get the output from the project and say, here's the answer. This is how we're going to reduce the crashes by X percentage. We'll increase, we'll go from level of service F to D. But it really needs to be that impartial assessment and not so much this is the answer because this is the outputs from the analyses. Wanted to have folks make informed decisions, giving them as comprehensive information as available, and always going back to the studies, goals to make sure that those objectives, goals are being met. So where are we now? We've had some very good collaborative meetings with the district office to resolve the merging and bypass lane for the roundabout. That's our last piece to work through. And then with that, we get through that last coordination effort. We are anticipating that the project will be let by the end of this year. So with that, thank you very much. And I guess we're going to open it up to questions for the entire group. Thank you.
So now we'll open up the floor to questions, and I believe we have a microphone in the back. Sarah's got a question. That works.
Okay, you can hear me? Okay.
Yep.
On the safety equipment purchase plan, is there like any information that's helpful for those who want to use that delivery mechanism that lead towards prioritization or like a more competitive, I guess, application? And what would be like a project maybe that's better fitted for that versus like some other delivery mechanisms like quick response or like signal IDIQ?
It on now.
There you go.
There it goes. As far as if something's a better fit for another program, if it's more involved than just a few types of equipment, it's probably a better fit for another program. It's really not meant to do, I mean, we can do multiple locations, but it's really meant to be more targeted, so less spread out, I would say. But as far as what gets you a definite yes for a request, you know, the stronger justification you make, obviously, the better. Data driven is always the best, but being proactive is important. So just, you know, the documentation is key. I guess unfortunately it is somewhat subjective. It's not black and white. But you know, with the next fiscal year funding of $1 million, you know, if there's not enough requests to fill the budget, then the requests that are received that make sense get pushed through, and that's kind of how it's been up till now. The only ones that have really been pushed back so far are some of the requests that are more signal upgrade related. The heads were purchased for some of those with like back plates because those obviously have a safety component to it. Like old wooden poles aren't going to be purchased with concrete. So hopefully that.
So, hello. I have a question for Jonathan about that safety equipment purchase program. Question is, you mentioned about your long backlog of requests that are already there and for the next fiscal year. So I wonder how this works. Do you guys just go through the list, or say if me from the city of Roswell, I have a location and I want to install a PHP, and PHP can range from, I don't know, maybe 20 grand to up to 200 grand.
Mhm.
If I could make modifications and provide justification with pit counts, crashes, whatever you call it, and maybe not overhead, pole mounted on the side, do I have a chance to compete against all your backlog, or no, I just go at the end of the line? How does that work?
The backlog is not, those requests were received probably 6 months ago at this point. So all those we're gonna have to go through and see if they still want it. Some of these, you know, they'll submit the request and we told them, hey, it's gonna sit. Then they may be, you know, some of our city of Atlanta, for example, they may have just gone ahead and pushed them forward themselves. So it just depends on how much of that backlog is still needed. So that's something we're going to go once the new PI and projects in place with the new funding, go through all those requests, see how much of those are still needed. And if we have to do our own kind of validation check, we will. But I guess to answer your question, it will go to the back of the line unless there's, you know, if it's being incorporated in an upcoming project to the head of the line, there's some factors in there that could change that up.
So that doesn't apply to the off system.
As far as where it gets put in line, it depends. I mean, politics play a component to it, right? If the right person pushes the right button, you know, things can move. But as far as the amount of funding, I mean, there's still enough funding to even do a PHP, for example. I mean, we've done what I say, 160 RFBs, And I think they're somewhere in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. Takes a lot of RFPs to spend $1 million. So, I mean, there's still a lot of capacity. to do
Thank you,
that.
Jonathan.
Any other questions? All right.
It hasn't been authorized yet. I do know that. When is it going to be authorized? I don't have a good answer. Hopefully soon. That's kind of the best I've.
Thanks. I had a question on the TDM update and just, you mentioned that 2019 was kind of your base year to avoid the obvious issues with 2020 data, but I'm also, I think we're all aware that there have been some changes since 2020 that have more or less remained in the traffic patterns and traffic volumes that are out there. And so I'm just curious, is that really going to be more considered in the next update, or are there any ways that you've kind of adjusted for some of those changes that you see? For example, more traffic maybe in the suburban areas and less in a lot of the downtown kind of core business districts.
So, question, even though traffic that we mentioned, but the base year is 20, just the model was kind of calibrated for 2019. So again, the base year is 2020, but we took the traffic count to validate them. So, but again, the next update, we kind of tend to have the update, the validation and calibration to be in between the CNL census, right? So if you remember in our presentation, the first one was 2006 base year, then we came to 2010 because of the census full information. Then we came in between the CNL census 2015 base year. Now we have 2020, right? So the next one, thinking, I haven't made a decision yet, but we're thinking 2015 to have the base year, 2025 rather, to have the base year, and then we validate and calibrate. Hopefully, another wave of COVID doesn't come, so 2025 traffic count will be good. So that's where we're heading right now.
All right, I think we're right at time. So just one last reminder to pick up your PDHs at the back table, sign up for AICP's credits. There's a volleyball tournament at 2 o'clock out on the beach, and let's give our speakers a round of applause.
Jonathan, we took all the bullets.
A lot of patients